Inside a metal enclosure, there is a perfect paradise. So much food it can never be eaten. Endless water, warmth, no predators, no disease, no winter. 8 mice are given a world built for thousands to live in. And for a while, they truly do. The colony grows, healthy young are born, everything flourishes, and then, though nothing is lacking, everything begins to fall apart. Around day 600, the last mouse that will ever be born here is born. What follows is a slow dying out. They weren't killed by hunger, a predator, or disease. They were killed by a paradise in which nothing was needed anymore, and the man who designed it claimed he had just seen the future of humanity. This is the story of an experiment that was meant to be a paradise and became one of the most unsettling warnings of the 20th century. In 1968, the American behavioral researcher John Calhoun began an experiment he gave a number. He simply called it Universe 25. That number is no accident. It was his 25th attempt to build the same thing, a perfect world for rodents. The previous 24 had ended much the same way, and he was still searching for the answer to one question. What happens to a society given absolutely everything? This time, he decided to do it perfectly. He built a metal enclosure, a kind of large square box. To a mouse, it was infinity. Inside was a paradise, precisely designed. Food in such abundance, it could feed many times more mice than could ever fit there. Unlimited water, a perfect temperature, material for nests, walls arranged so nothing could get in or out, no predator, no disease because everything was clean, no competition to survive. The only limit of this world was its size, space, and nothing more. Into this paradise, Calhoun released 4 pairs of healthy mice, 8 animals to start, in a world built for thousands. At first, it went exactly as you'd expect. Paradise worked. The first mice looked around, claimed ground, built nests, and began doing what mice do best when they lack for nothing: breeding. For the first months, the population doubled roughly every 55 days. The animals multiplied at an exponential rate. This was the golden age of the colony. The young were born healthy, grew up safe, the food never ran low. Everything suggested Calhoun had just built a working utopia, a place where life simply flourishes. But somewhere beneath that bloom, a crack was already growing, and it began with something easy to miss. As the mice multiplied, what started to run out wasn't food or water or room to sleep. What started to run out were roles. In a normal world, every mouse has something to do. You have to find food, defend territory, escape danger, find a mate, fight for status. Life sets tasks. In Calhoun's paradise, all those tasks vanished. Food was free. There were no threats. Territory didn't need defending because nothing could attack from outside. Suddenly, the colony was full of adult, healthy mice for whom there was simply no place left in the social structure. There were no open roles left to take. And then the most important thing in any society began to fall apart: behavior. The males broke first. In a healthy colony, the stronger males defend territory and a group of females. That's their role. But when all the roles were gone, some of the males, the ones that lost the competition for status, had nowhere to go. They couldn't leave because the world was closed. They couldn't disappear. So they began to withdraw. They gathered in the center of the enclosure in listless, apathetic, indifferent groups. Now and then, sudden, senseless bursts of aggression erupted among them, aimed at no one in particular. They attacked each other for no reason and to no end, then sank back into stillness. Since the males stopped playing their role, the colony's defense ceased to exist. And that struck straight at the females and their young. In a healthy colony, a female is protected while she cares for her offspring. Here, she was protected by no one, so she had to defend herself, and she turned aggressive. That aggression, with nowhere to go, began flowing down onto the weakest, onto her own children. Females began abandoning their young before they grew up. They harmed them, pushed them out of the nest too early. Infant mortality in some parts of the enclosure reached nearly 100%. The generation meant to take over the colony largely just didn't survive to adulthood. And it was exactly these young, the ones that did survive but grew up with no care, no role models, no normal relationships, who became the most disturbing part of this whole story. Because from them grew a generation the likes of which had never been seen. Calhoun called them the beautiful ones. They were mice, mostly males, that had completely withdrawn from social life. They didn't fight. They didn't seek out mates. They didn't defend territory. They sought neither conflict nor closeness. They did only three things. They ate, they slept, and they endlessly groomed their fur, licking, cleaning, preening for hours, day after day. That's why Calhoun called them beautiful, because physically they were flawless. Gleaming fur, no scars, no marks of any fight because they had taken part in no fight. They looked like the healthiest animals in the whole colony, and they were empty inside. They couldn't court. They couldn't reproduce. They didn't react to other mice, as if another individual held no interest for them at all. They never learned to be mice in the full sense of the word, because they grew up in a world where no one taught them, and where there was no longer any reason to do anything. They were alive, well-fed, well-kept, and utterly incapable of a life that led anywhere. Once the beautiful ones became a large part of the population, the colony's fate was sealed. Too many mice could no longer reproduce. Too many females had abandoned motherhood. Too many males had withdrawn into apathy. The birth rate fell, then it fell further, until, at some point, no new mice were being born at all. The population peaked around day 560, over 2,000 animals. Around day 600, the last mouse was born, and after it, none ever came again. And then, the colony began to shrink. Not suddenly, not through catastrophe. The old mice simply died of old age, and no one came to take their place. The colony aged and did not renew itself until, more than 1,000 days after it began, the very last mouse died. And here lies the darkest detail of the whole story. At the moment this ending began, there was plenty of space in the enclosure, plenty of food, plenty of water. Physically, nothing had changed. Paradise was still working. But something in the mice themselves had broken so deeply that even the return of space and calm fixed nothing anymore. Calhoun tried. He took out the beautiful ones, moved them to new, empty spaces, gave them perfect conditions all over again. They didn't respond. They were already too far gone. They never returned to normal behavior. The last mouse of Universe 25 died. A world meant to be an endless paradise fell completely empty. It was killed not by scarcity, but by excess, in which every reason to live fully had vanished. Calhoun called what he saw a spiritual death that precedes physical death. The animals stopped being themselves long before they stopped existing. Behavior died first, role, bond, purpose. Only later, many days later, did the body die. And now we come to why this experiment with mice echoed around the world, and why we still talk about it today. Because Calhoun never thought it was a story about mice. From the beginning, he was writing about people. He treated the enclosure as a model. He believed it showed something universal, that when a society solves all its basic problems, hunger, danger, the struggle to survive, and at the same time grows very dense and strips individuals of meaningful roles, exactly what happened to his mice begins to happen. Withdrawal. The breakdown of bonds. Falling birth rates. A generation of the beautiful ones who only consume and tend to themselves, but no longer create anything that leads anywhere. His term for this state, the behavioral sink, entered the language. Universe 25 became one of the most frequently cited experiments and conversations about the future of civilization, about falling birth rates, about loneliness in big cities, about a generation that has everything and wants nothing. But here I have to stop and say something honest, because without it, this story would be a manipulation. A mouse is not a human. Scientists today view Calhoun's conclusions far more cautiously than pop culture did. They point out that his enclosure was not a clean model of overcrowding, that earlier, before it ever got crowded, its social structure collapsed, and that some of the problems may have come from the very way the experiment was designed. A human is not a mouse in a metal box. We have culture, choice, the ability to change the rules, to invent new goals where the old ones disappear. History has shown many times that human societies respond to abundance differently than those mice did. Treating Universe 25 as a literal prophecy of humanity's collapse is a misuse, and the experiment itself became, over time, a tool in the hands of people who wanted it to prove conclusions they'd already reached. And yet it's hard to forget, and hard to fully dismiss the question it leaves behind. Because even if we are not mice, something in the image of the beautiful ones resonates uneasily. Healthy, well-kept, safe, surrounded by an abundance no earlier generation ever knew, living side by side, but more and more, not with one another. Turned inward, withdrawn, as if they'd run out of any reason to reach out to others. Calhoun believed his mice were killed not by a lack of challenges, but by their disappearance. That a creature with nothing to face slowly stops being itself. That a paradise in which nothing is needed turns out to be one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a living being. You don't have to believe it. Mice are not people, and the future isn't written in a metal enclosure from half a century ago. But the next time you think the perfect life is one with no difficulty left, no resistance, no struggle, remember the colony that got exactly that. Everything one could wish for, and vanished. Not because it lacked anything, but because nothing was needed of it anymore.